sacrificing everything for one of you, and it makes no sense what I'm putting myself through.
Oh hey, James Meter here. How's it going? I'm in the control room of Pique Recording. I was just jamming out to a new song by this songwriter named Jared Harper. He has this tune called If I Can't Have You, and I mixed it here, and I just kind of wanted to share some mixing approaches that I did when I was working on this tune. There's three main things. There's the use of saturation and distortion to make things kind of jump out of the mix. I also use a lot of slap delay to kind of put the mix in a space, a hall if you will. And then thirdly, well, let's get to those other things first, and then I'll share something a little bit different at the very end. All right.
And I met pretend in a time I'm feeling blue, and all above the things I'd be.
All right, well, let's just kind of jump into some instruments here and hear what's going on. Let's start with the bass. This is the raw bass sound I'll share. That's the sound that I was given. And so I really wanted to try to bring some definition out of the bass. So first did some compression, and then there's that distortion that I was talking about. I like to use the lo-fi plugin quite a lot, so you'll see this on a ton of tracks. So there's the lo-fi, some more EQ carving to kind of get the mid-range, to add some definition to the mid-range. And then lastly, which is kind of different for bass, I did add some slap delay. So you can kind of hear how they kind of add some movement. It's kind of cool. Alright, let's move right along to the drums. I took off the plugins on the drum buses, so all of the individual tracks are what you're hearing now. I did do some compression on EQ on the individual tracks, as well as adding some distortion to just the snare drum. Quite a lot of distortion to the snare drum. This is kind of a basic sound that I got. I do remember thinking when I heard this for the first time that the ride cymbal especially had a lot of top end to it, so much so that it was kind of a little annoying to my ears. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of tucked in that top end of the ride cymbal. You can see I tried to duck it out a little bit on the overheads, but I did even more so on the buses here. Let's just check those out. There's the compression, some more EQ, and there's that distortion, just a little bit. And then finally, both these buses, there's two stereo drum buses that are summed into an additional bus right there, this one here. And I have a tape emulation on there, and you can see on the meter, it's kind of crushing the meter there. And also, there's some delay. There's that slap delay. That's without. That's with. So it kind of puts it, the sound in the same space as the bass with the slap. Cool. Moving right along here. There is an acoustic guitar. So again, on the acoustic guitar, there is some slap delay happening. I use a lot of short delays on individual tracks, and then the slap is on an auxiliary send. So it puts that acoustic in the same space as the drums and the bass guitar. And then there's also an electric guitar, and you'll notice it does something very similar. So that's without the slap. There's still a little bit of delay on there. I'll take that off. So that's, it does have a reverb sound. Take that off. It gets even more dry. Put it back on. And now the slap. Alright, cool. And now we have the lead vocal. Okay, I'll take off all these plugins. They are off. And then if I play some of this.
And all above the things I'd be unlucky to.
Take that
if
off.
I can't
That's
have
the
you.
slap for the vocal.
I fight so long.
And some
To
delay
watch
throws.
you walk away with someone else.
Take those off so
It's
they don't
been
get
so
confusing there.
long. I'm used to
So some
diving in
EQ,
all by myself.
some compression,
I fight so
and
long.
here's that distortion I was talking about.
To watch you walk away
There's one
with
stage,
someone else.
there's two stage.
It's been so long.
Now because of that distortion, I kind of introduced some of that annoying sibilance that sometimes gets into tracks, so use de-esser to take some of that out.
And all above
Or
the
a lot of
things
that
I'd
out.
be unlucky to. If I can't have you.
More compression,
I fight so long.
more EQ, getting some
To
5K out
watch
of the
you
full
walk
tech.
away with someone else.
More distortion,
It's been so long.
and finally some EQ
I'm
shaping.
used to diving in all by
And then
myself.
the slap.
I fight so long.
And wow, there's more distortion happening on that slap there, the slap echo. So I'm using a lot of small amounts of distortion in various parts of the chain so that I'm controlling it and also making it more exciting. Controlling it a little bit. It's kind of like taking one step back, going a couple forward until I get to the sweet spot that I want to hear and works with the rest of the track.
And all above the things I'd be unlucky to. If I can't have you, I fight so long.
Alright, and now I'll jump to the very last part of the mix that makes this very interesting because I've never done this before on a mix until this one. And that is, I mix this whole thing in stereo. You can see there's, the guitars have some stereo back and forth going on. And when we got to the final stage, I was getting ready to send this off to mastering. Jared told me, he's like, can we make the master mono? And I was really confused. I've never done a mono master, especially because I had worked on the mix in stereo and it sounded really exciting. But Jared can only hear out of one ear, so that was a surprise to me and I didn't know that. And so after I mixed all this, I collapsed it into mono and it turned out it sounded really good. So we just went ahead and did that.
And all above the things I'd be unlucky.
So I have this return bus from my hardware processing that I do on the 2-bus. So that's returning from some hardware compression and EQ that I have over here in my rack. And then I'm hearing it in stereo here, but I can also hear it in mono if I go like this.
And all above the things I'd be unlucky to.
And because there is the stereo pan law, when I collapse it into mono, the level jumps up. So much so that I used the trim on this, but I actually just backed off the return to an appropriate level that I could send to the mastering engineer, who happened to be Garrett Bevins, who's done a lot of work for me, who did a fantastic job on the master. So anyways, that is kind of like a basic rundown of that whole track. It's kind of really interesting to hear it start in stereo and end in mono, and still really hold up and feel balanced and exciting throughout the song. So I think it's a really cool tune. Make sure you check it out. Say hello to Jared for me, and thanks for stopping by. See you later.
I'm used to diving in all by myself, yeah. I'm sacrificing everything for one of you, and it makes no sense when I'm putting myself through. And